This is the worst season that Oklahoma football has had in 26 years. In order for them to become bowl eligible, they got to beat either Alabama or LSU in their last two games, and they most likely aren't going to be able to get it done. And they end up finishing the season 5-7, being one of the worst teams in the SEC. And I was not expecting for Ole Miss or Oklahoma, to struggle year one in the SEC. I expected Oklahoma to be a 9-8 win team potentially. And it causes you to have a lot of raised eyebrows when it comes to Brent Venables' future at Oklahoma, because they just gave this dude a contract extension right before the season, if I'm not mistaken. And at this point, you're not going to be able to fire him after this year or next year, so you're stuck with him for at least 3 more years. Is he going to be able to get this thing turned around? I believe he can. Oklahoma has recruited at a very high level. And a lot of the guys that they recruit out of high school, they do a really good job at developing. I still believe in Brent Venables. I still believe that he can right the ship for the Sooners. And I expect this to be a way better team in 2025 because you missed on your offensive coordinator hire. You pretty much lose Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State, and you promote Seth Luttrell from within, and he just wasn't a good fit. And Jackson Arnold, I'm not about to write him off just yet. I believe that we put a little bit too much stock into these young redshirt freshmen due to all the pristine that they had coming out of high school, because Jackson Arnold, he struggled just as much as how Dylan Raiola and Nico Iamaleava has struggled this year. None of these redshirt freshman quarterbacks have been that good this season. And we seem to forget that sometimes that it takes a year or two of development for these guys to turn into really high-level quarterbacks. Nobody is just a great quarterback right out the gate most of the time. Some of these guys have to sit or they have to develop for a few years before they can play at an elite level. And I think next year, with Oklahoma hiring a new offensive coordinator, whoever that may be, having Jackson Arnold and another quarterback come in for competition will also do them justice, because you most definitely should be able to get competent quarterback play next year. If Jackson Arnold stays, he doesn't transfer out, he should take a massive step in development. And plus, what doesn't get talked about is the amount of injuries that Oklahoma has had to deal with this season. I mean, going into week 1, they were banged up. They had a lot of injuries in fall camp. They were down like 2-3 of their starting wide receivers for the majority of this season, along with losing several starters on the offensive line. This was an offense that was dealing with a new offensive coordinator. You had a young quarterback. You had a lot of new faces on the offensive line. You had a lot of guys who were banged up at wide receiver. So I'm not going to say that Brent Venables is a bad coach, because a lot of the issues that Oklahoma has had to deal with mainly has been due to injuries and just, you having a younger quarterback. You're not just going to have a quarterback that comes in right away and he just pops off. The only team that consistently finds great quarterbacks are Alabama and Lincoln Riley. That's about it. Carson Beck hasn't been that good for Georgia, but the difference is that the offensive line and the team around Carson Beck is good enough to help elevate him. Oklahoma didn't have that. By the time they got into week 3, week 4, they had like third stringers on the offensive line that had to start. You had young guys at wide receiver who were not ready to play this year, who had to step into those roles due to the amount of injuries that Oklahoma had to overcome this year. And winning in the SEC is tough to do when you're doing it with a team that is just absolutely depleted due to injuries. Look at what happened to Florida when they played Texas. They got absolutely obliterated in that game. And the following week, when they got their quarterback healthy, they pull off an upset at home against LSU. The SEC is too tough of a conference where you're going to have success with a bunch of injuries. You got to be healthy if you're going to win in the SEC, or you at least got to have elite depth, which is hard to have when, the guys who are backups on your team are being bribed nonstop by other teams where they're saying, hey, like, you're a backup here. Not only if you transfer to us, we're going to give you an opportunity to start, but we're also going to give you a really lucrative NIL deal. You feel me? So I believe that this season isn't a complete indictment on Brent Venables being a bad head coach. I do feel like injuries played a large reason into why Oklahoma has had this disappointing season. But also, he just made the wrong hire with Seth Littrell. If you can hire Jeff Lebby, who's now the head coach at Mississippi State, he was a pretty good OC, then you can hire another good OC. Who is that going to be? That's to be decided. But I trust that Brent Venables can get this program heading back in the right direction. It's not like they are under recruiting, because they've done a really good job at recruiting. As a matter of fact, Oklahoma is having more success recruiting under Venables than what they ever did under Lincoln Riley. And last year, this was a squad that won 10 games under Brent Venables. This season, as disappointing as what it is, I still feel when you zoom out and you look at Brent Venables' tenure at Oklahoma from a 1,000-degree angle, Oklahoma still is in pretty good shape under Venables. Like Jackson Arnold, hopefully he can take that step in year 2 with this program being the starter. If not, Michael Hawkins would be in his second season with this team. If Jackson Arnold can't get it done, he could end up getting it done. You got a lot of talent at running back. You just have to figure out the offensive line, and you got to get more depth at wide receiver, which Oklahoma should be able to do. It's not like this is a team that has a bunch of holes. Oklahoma has enough NIL money when they can go into the portal, they can buy up some of the best offensive linemen, some of the best wide receivers, and they can fix their biggest needs. And hell, if they got to go in the portal and they got to get a Miller Moss at QB or one of the highly touted quarterbacks out of this upcoming portal cycle, they can do so. Oklahoma, to me, has always been ready for the SEC. They've always been a SEC level program based off how well they recruit and how consistent they've been over the last 2 decades. It's just that they had a down season where you're in too tough of a conference to be able to overcome the amount of injuries that they had to deal with. If you were playing in the Big 12 this year, you probably still win 8-9 games in spite of all of the injuries that you had. The thing with Brent Venables is that as a defensive-minded coach, you're not really specializing on the offense side of the football. You got to make sure that you make the right hires when it comes to the guys on your offensive staff. And if you can hire Jeff Lebby, why can't you hire another good offensive coordinator? Because if you did it before, you should be able to do it again. Every head coach has a few share of misses when it comes to coordinator hires. Even Nick Saban hired a few bad coordinators. The only difference is that Nick Saban was such a great coach that he could overcome having funky coordinators. Brent Venables isn't on that level. And there are a ton of great coordinator hires that Oklahoma can make. You could easily steal a guy from one of the better G5 schools, like maybe a Boise State, maybe the coordinator from UNLV who runs the go-go offense. And I don't really know the go-go offense will work, but, the world is your oyster when it comes to the OC hires that you can make. You got the money. This program is more than dedicated to doing what it takes to field a championship caliber team, and that means that they're willing to dish out the necessary funding required to get a big-time OC hire. So I expect Oklahoma to bounce back next year. I never foreseen them being this bad, but the defense still has looked relatively good. And with Brent Venables being a defensive-minded coach and that being the best area of this team, it shows you that he's somewhat of a competent coach, because I would have more red flags about Brent Venables if the defense was struggling. The defense isn't struggling. If you specialize in a particular area of the ball, that's where the strength of your team should be. You shouldn't be struggling on the area that you specialize in. And this defense has been good. This has been a championship caliber defense. This defense kept them in it somewhat against Tennessee. And it's not like, they played too many games when they just got ran out the stadium. It's just that when your offense keeps going 3-and-out, 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 you got all of these crazy turnovers from Jackson Arnold. You lose games because your defense is on the field for way more plays than what they should be. And I don't think that it's, crazy to expect Jackson Arnold to struggle with turnovers with him being such a young player. He's undisciplined. The speed of the game just seems to be a little bit too fast for him right now. I think with an added year, a spring practice, you get another fall camp in there, you'll see a better player. I think that he'll look more relaxed in 2025. And if he doesn't work out, you can go to Michael Hawkins or you can bring in somebody else. Oklahoma should be able to bounce back from this season. This is a program that has normally been pretty consistent in terms of always being around 9 to 10 wins consistently. So I still believe in Brent Venables. It seems to be a civil war going on between Oklahoma fans in terms of how they feel about Brent Venables or Brent Venables. Listen, if you want Brent Venables to get fired and you believe that this dude doesn't have what it takes to lead Oklahoma to glory, then I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you, because even I am a little bit skeptical, because I wasn't expecting for Oklahoma to fall off this bad, even with the injuries that they had. There's a few wins that I felt they could have gotten.